Enneagram is a personality framework. It is built around 9 distinct archetypes of personality that tie to a motivation. Why do I do what I do? Versus just the categorization of what I do. And then we use behavioral theory and somatics and leadership development to work backwards from that behavior and build something sustainable.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency.
Hi, and welcome back to the Business Origin Stories podcast. Today, I am interviewing Erin Baute, a behavior and business strategist, Enneagram expert, and transformational guide who helps business owners, entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and managers recover their intuition and increase their capacity using the power of their own personality. Erin's a professional business coach and leadership behavioral strategist with over 20 years of experience. She has a bachelor's degree in human development, master's of public health, and a PhD in organizational psychology with a focus on personal and professional development using personality as a framework. I worked with Erin back in 2020, which we talk about, and I took one of her Enneagram classes, which was incredible. She drops the most stunning wisdom, and the thing that I've always appreciated about Erin is she's a lifelong learner, and she will always point people back to ways that they can recover and increase their capacity in life. And in this world that feels very noisy, very busy, very sad a lot of times, she brings just such a bright light to business and is such a go-getter. And I think as you're building out teams or becoming a better leader yourself, the wisdom that Erin offers in this interview is exactly what you will need today. So with that, let's go. Erin, I'm so thankful you're here today. Can you tell everyone where you are right now?
I live in Montreal, Quebec.
That is very fun. We were just talking before we started recording, and you're my second international guest, which is very fancy.
Yeah, I feel very fancy.
Because how long? You've been in Canada a year?
Yeah, just almost a year and a half.
A year and a
and a half this summer. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you are an international guest, but you're also American. So you're playing that like very cool middle expat diplomat world, which I love. But I'm really thrilled. I've been your client. You've been my client. We've had a long relationship since, when did I find you? 2020, I think is when
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Took your Enneagram class. And I am so thrilled to talk about the Enneagram because I know it's a popular topic. Can you tell everyone, what do you do and how do you do it? And let's just dive right in because we're talking Enneagram today.
Yes. Well, I am a behaviorist by trade. So I studied human development and behavior change. And so I'm maybe the nerdiest person y'all meet. And through that work, I discovered the Enneagram, which is a personality profile, much like things like the DISC assessment or Myers-Briggs. And I have been trained in those tools as well. But the Enneagram attached to behavior in a way that a lot of these other trait-based personality models didn't. And so I just loved it from inception. And I have integrated into my work in behavior change, specifically leadership behavior change over the past almost 20 years, which makes us feel really old. And through that work, I have worked on a PhD in organizational psychology. So I look at the behaviors that we need as business owners. I primarily love to work with female entrepreneurs because we're rad and we deserve really good, amazing support. And we look at the behaviors as an individual and we use the personality profile to help us get really clear about those behaviors and then what we need in terms of the context of our organization. And that organization just might be me, but it still has systems and operational processes around it that need to reflect my unique personality. So I really think about it as like lifespan development of an entrepreneur from, personal development to professional development to operational development. We sort of walk all of that together.
what you do, because when people think of the Enneagram, I think a lot of people just think of like the fun memes on social media. And when my friend Hannah, I think was the one that was like, you really should come to this Enneagram class with me. This was in 2020, right? Yeah, it was 2020.
Yep.
I had just had a baby. The world was a disaster. And I was like, okay, I mean, whatever. I know I'm an Enneagram 3. What does it matter?
I was going to say like,
gosh,
okay, yeah, I'll go.
I think it was 6 weeks, 8 weeks. That was the first time I had kind of jumped into personal development in a way that all of a sudden just, I don't know, it just opened my eyes to so many things. And Enneagram all of a sudden wasn't this like fun meme thing on Instagram. By the time I was done, I felt like I was getting a PhD in the Enneagram, and it was crazy. You have paradigm shifts with the Enneagram that I think no one else has done the work that you're doing. So I really want to dive into that, because when you say this is a lifespan of an entrepreneur, you're using this in a way that's not just like fun and fluffy. The Enneagram is really a guide to come home to yourself in so many ways. So you want to go there with me? Can we talk about it?
And also,
you
like,
shifted
sidebar, I do love the silly memes, right?
Yes, and you create them. They're very fun. You create them.
But we learn the complexity. We learn the both and of like, oh, I can have fun with the silly parts of my personality, and I can also use this as a transformational tool to learn about myself and deepen my understanding.
Mm-hmm. How did you get there? Because I think, and again, no shade on the people that are just creating the very fun memes, because that's what social media is about. It's like fun. But how did you move from this is just like a cool tool to, oh my gosh, this can change people's lives? Like, what was that transformation? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, pain and trauma, I think.
You're laughing as you're saying trauma.
Yeah.
Talk to me, Erin.
So I found the Enneagram at a time in my life where I was at the sort of height of my corporate career. I worked in corporate America for 15 years. 14 of those years, I was in a director position or above, leading other people. I was put in charge way too early. And I got married young, got divorced young. And I was introduced to the Enneagram through work as a tool to help me teach and train other people. I was traveling 200 days a year. I was doing team strategy and development and scaling for a marketing-based company, a sales-based company. And so helping sales leaders grow their sales teams. And I wasn't the metric side of it. I was the development side of it, the people part of it. And so the Enneagram was just a tool at that point. And my whole personal life was crashing at the time that my professional life was hitting its peak, right? And doesn't that sound just on point? Mm-hmm. And so I used it as a tool for me first. And I did this week-long training. I fell in love with what I learned in the week-long training. I loved my master Enneagram teacher. Her name's Dr. Otten, and she still does, Enneagram certification and coaching and training. And I started getting coached by her, right? I did my own personal work. I started going to therapy at her center. I started to get support and help. I started in a cohort in a community to do my own learning. And I spent 2 years working on me. And it's gnarly work. I mean, anybody who has done it knows, like, this is not pretty. This is not, it's messy. Mm-hmm. And it really worked. It really, really helped to get to know myself better. And through that whole process, I've had lots of other trials and tribulations that keep deepening my understanding and my own healing. And I just keep wrapping those tools in. And so it allows my work to go from, sort of this traditional productivity-based business coaching to identity transformation and stress management and somatic work, and these tools that really help us hold change, not just know change, but hold it. And so, yeah, I laugh, but I am serious. It is my own pain and my own healing that has done a lot of the guiding work for me.
I think that's what makes the best coaches, right? When we have taken the time to really go inward and do our own work before we come out and help guide others. So hate that you had to go through all of that. And also very grateful that you used it to transform and change and now teach and guide the rest of us, which I think is really powerful.
And I think that's where the motivation comes from, because I know relief is possible. Even relief in garbage systems, right? Where like we don't support women the way that we should, especially working women who are mothers. Like there's a lot of pressure and a lot of pain. And there, even in the midst of all of that, there relief is possible. And so I'm really passionate about the accessibility of that because it worked for me.
I love that. Let's go back and tell people, just in case there's anyone listening that's unfamiliar with the Enneagram or they're not looking at the fun memes on Instagram like we are. Tell people what is the Enneagram? Where did it come from? And if I'm a business owner, how can this help me in my journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So the Enneagram is a personality framework. It is built around 9 distinct archetypes of personality that tie to a motivation. Why do I do what I do versus just the categorization of what I do. It really is helping to connect language to the why I do something. And so it's not remarkable in that way. There's lots of ways that we can look at personality. There's, thousands upon thousands of personality tests and tools and research and all of the things. It's just one that really, I think, aligns to this idea of behavior change, right? And that's my specific area in the world. And so if I can really take a tool like the Enneagram and use it as the thread through all of your behaviors to put language to why does Amy do the things that she does, and why might it have been hard for Amy at a period of time to do less, or to set things down, or to not finish things perfectly, or at her highest standard, right? Those are all stereotypes that I'm putting on her because that might not be true. But, why might that thread underneath the behavior be so important? And then we use behavioral theory and somatics and leadership development to work backwards from that behavior and build something sustainable, right? Because oftentimes personality is birthed out of coping. And what served me as a little kid doesn't serve me as a 43-year-old mom of 2 entrepreneur. Like it just isn't enough for me. And so then I can wrap all of these other tools around and sort of deconstruct the limitations of our type to help build a more holistic, nuanced, realistic, honestly, approach to how we live and work. And so for entrepreneurs or folks in business, what we struggle with, and I struggle with this too, is filtering what works for somebody else may not work for me. And if I don't have that language or that thread underneath it, I'm not filtering anything. It is, shooting fish in a barrel. And I have to try a lot of things on in order to see what fits or what doesn't. And it takes me a lot longer. My failure rate is higher. My risks are higher. But if I can narrow the field a little bit and know, okay, I'm not even going to go here because that just isn't a good fit for me, then the things that I try, I can get to success more quickly or more effectively, and whatever success looks like for me, right? And so we tailor make strategy aligned to what's best for your personality, rather than, I think, a lot of what productivity culture around business says, if this works for me, this should work for you. And that's maybe only if your marketing or messaging is attracting people who are just like you. Yeah, perfect. Bingo. But what about those outliers? And so to me, it feels ethical to do this digging so that we're actually giving you results, not just selling you a pipe dream. And then what happens is that we end up feeling like it's me. There's something wrong with me because I can't make it work.
Ooh. I think what you're saying, Erin, is that if people do this work early on in their entrepreneurial journey, it's almost excuse this word, but a hack, right? To get to success better and quicker, because you're going to help me align a strategy to take on entrepreneurship in a way that is actually designed to work with who I am and what I need to work through to get to the other side quicker. Am I
That's right.
understanding
That's
that
right. And my work with folks is finite because after we sort of build the foundation to the house, you don't need me anymore. Now you need other people. Now you need folks like you. Now you need the financial person or the administrative assistant. But instead of going to 6 different places for help and molding myself 6 different ways, I now know me well enough to go, oh, okay, plug in this way. Oh, plug in this way. I'm certain you have lots of clients. I'm sure I was one of them who were like, I don't know the answers to these questions. Like how much further, how much more effective or successful could, a business owner be if they came to you and are like, I actually know me. Mm-hmm. Now you do you better than anybody in the world and make it sound attractive to potential clients or whatever it is. So I'm not the answer always. It's just sort of the guide at the beginning until we get to that level of clarity. And then I just use the Enneagram to fast forward language.
Okay, I love this because you're right. I think that is one of the most frustrating, hard things about being a business coach and a messaging coach is people come and they expect their copywriter or their business coach to be like, well, figure me out and then write about it. Like make
That's
it great.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay, but do you think this or do you think, and I say this from a place of love and also understanding because clarity can be really hard to get to. And it takes time to get there and messy action, right? To get there. Yeah. But I found that people who, and I keep repeating that phrase, but it's one that I use all the time in my business, have come home to themselves and know themselves well enough to say like, I want to own this light. I want to claim this spark. Everything else is so much easier because then they have clarity moving forward rather than outsourcing this power of saying, well, you tell me what I should do, right?
That's right.
And so that is beautiful. So when's the best time people should work with you, Erin? Obviously, jumping into entrepreneurship, if they haven't yet or if they're in it, I would say it's like the best personal development tool because holy cow. I would say motherhood and owning a business will bring you to your knees and build you back up and break you open in the most beautiful ways. So, but at what point should people call you to go? You kind of a 3-step process, I think, right? Or 3 phases that you take people through. Yeah. At what point or what problems are they experiencing? Who's this ideal person that should come hang out with you?
I think that's such a beautiful question. I'm going to step back and use some science and then answer it if that's okay. So part of my dissertation work was really to study the economic inequity of female entrepreneurs or business owners in the United States. And so the last time we really looked at any information around success rates was in 2019 with the census data. And we could see that women-led businesses, small business, made up less than 20% of all small businesses in the United States at that time. Now, hold on to your chair when I tell you this. Of that 20% of those small businesses, less than 67% of them made or the 67% of those female small business owners made less than $25,000 that last year. It is statistically improbable that when female-led small business owners will get to the $100,000 mark or more. I mean, it is under 5% or under 7% of female-led businesses. The vast majority of them aren't making enough. They're making a living wage. They aren't making enough. They're below the poverty line. And what we can tell is that the vast majority of small businesses fold sometime around year 3.
Yeah.
Because of the economic hardship that is put on them, right? And so when we see content and data around, hey, hit $10,000 a month, we are speaking to the elite. We're speaking to under 10% of women in business, right? And so we're pushing women who are struggling financially under a poverty line to hit an ideal that is not possible. So our culture of that is setting most women in business up to fail, right? And so I really feel passionate about, I want to help small business owners get over that 3-year mark. Like, I want to be gritty with you. I want to be in it with you. I want to build it with you to get to the 4-year and 5-year where all of a sudden profit starts to change. And it's really hard to do. I mean, I'm at the 3rd year of me on my own, right? And this is my hardest year in business. And I am so privileged because I have a spouse who we can live off of his financial, what he brings in, right? I am not the norm. Somebody who's trying to build a business and pay their bills, whoo, they are the true queens, like, in this world. And so being ethical and thoughtful about what kind of money that you have to invest and where and what, like, that's the part I'm really, really passionate about. So to answer your question, I would say like year 2 and year 3, if you're in that struggle bus, or if maybe you've used some come hell or high water, like you made it through and you want to scaling not by the grit, but scale from a place of like capacity. I think those 2 places I can help you the most, and then no, you won't need me anymore.
I mean, I know the 45%, right, in year like 45% of businesses, go out of business. And so I know these things, but I didn't realize I didn't have the women statistics to go along with it. So that is really powerful. And I also hope that is helpful for if you're a woman in business listening and you haven't reached, we see so many things, right? I'm a marketer. You can market anything online, and it doesn't really have to have receipts. So people can, those $1 million a year, those things that people are just throwing out all day long. I hope that this conversation, those statistics can bring a little bit of balm. Like, it's not you necessarily, right?
It's not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you add on top of that, that white women make 74 cents on the dollar to every man. But as you move down levels of marginalization, it gets worse and worse. So if you are a fat, Black, queer, disabled woman, you make like 23 cents on the dollar to a white man. So I say all of this, that the systems that we are asked to operate in are garbage when it comes to our economic equity and what's accessible to us. And so we unfortunately have to work smarter than everybody else to get to that point of success, because just the place we're operating in is setting us up to fail. And so that's really like my passion point, is helping women make more money. That's amazing.
Yes. I want everyone to make more money. Money is an amazing tool. Erin, this is really eye-opening, because I think you're saying the secret to busting those systems, right, is what we are all saying over and over again, is it's owning who you are and stepping into your full self in a different way. Because when you shine that light, it can't help but impact people around you. And that doesn't mean that's going to break all the systems,
but it might help you tolerate them and work around them and find tools. But if we're acting as someone else, right? If we're taking on other people's processes or approaches, we don't have the capacity, because we're already masking. We're already wearing an ill-fitting sweater, right? So the more we get in touch with our own needs and our own self and our own capacity, our own nervous system, everything, the more likely we are going to build a business that will be around in 5 years.
I'm going to call Erin, right?
I love my work so much.
I know you do, and you're good at it. Do you always tell me the first step for people if they're hearing this and they're like, well, shit, I need to do some more work, more inner work, all the things. But you make it, maybe it's not fun to do this work, but I think it is impactful. So Erin, tell me the first step in doing this work. Is that the typing interview, or should I take a quiz online to find out what my Enneagram type is? Talk to me about step 1. How do we move through this so then we can move into the really juicy somatic work and putting yourself in stressful situations so you can come out of it better? Talk to me about that. What's step 1?
I always like to start with the typing, even if somebody knows their type, right? Even if they connect with it, let's say Amy are like, hey, I want to do something. And we feel pretty confident in that free-ish aspects for you. I would still want to do a typing for you, because what it does is it gives me a map of everywhere you are right now, how you're using all of the types, how you function in all of the personalities and what comes up, what your pinches are and triggers, where your stressors are. It gives me such clarity, and it puts us on the same starting line really, really quickly. And there's been more times than I'd like to count where someone's like, oh, I know my type already. And we do a typing interview. And I'm like, I'd really like for you to consider this as an alternative. And they're like, oh, man, that's me. That's it. So it does help as a stopgap for some of the mistyping that can happen when we're more complicated as a human. Maybe we have more stuff going on, like trauma or neurodiversity or mental health, that can sort of get in the way or convolute behavior. I don't hate tests, right? My kids will tell me hate's like a strong word. So I don't dislike tests. They're just not accurate. So if a test is more feasible for you to start, your own personal awareness work, do it. Just hold it really lightly that it's fairly inaccurate. And so you can use it as a starting point, maybe as a piece of clay, but you're responsible for sort of molding it and figuring out what's true and what's not true. And that can be really hard to do with our unconscious habits, the things that we shoved down and don't pay attention to. So I am not the only one in the world that can do this work well. There's lots of people who do it well. I just really encourage people that whoever you work with or whoever you get this information from, make sure they're checking their own bias in this, because I look at you through the lens of me. And if I don't know how to filter that, I might project my own things onto you. And so at the end of the day, we have to be the experts of our own filter and take what fits right now and leave the rest.
Okay, listeners, what you're hearing is a really good coach. Because and the reason I say that is because so many people go into coaching without having done that work. And so it is easy to say, this worked for me, so here's you, right? And so I just, a little caveat there, Erin is an excellent coach who's done this work to be a very good and ethical coach. And I think that's really important. So I'm just going to call that out real quick. Okay, so I think with the typing interview, because again, with the Enneagram, it's a circle. Correct. And the healthier you are, as you're really all parts of the Enneagram. You're not just, and I'm going to keep using Enneagram 3 because I'm just not an Enneagram 3, maybe wing 2, maybe wing 4, who never knows, right? What you taught me in that class was mind blowing, just the complexity and the nuances of the Enneagram. And so I think when I joke about the memes, it's really easy to share, here's me, I'm an Enneagram, whatever, blah. But really the work that you're doing is saying here's all of you. And you're actually, we are all one, because this is a circle here. It's not just a line and you're just this number. Correct?
That's right. That's right. It's not a bucket or a box that we live in. It's when we sort of identify our personality structure, we recognize that it's the most limited version of ourselves. And the Enneagram is like a gym. It's like gym equipment. And it's ways in which I can exercise parts of my personality or my ego or whatever you want to call it and expand into a more holistic self. So yes, Amy, 4 years ago, you took an intro to the Enneagram class and you are still a straight A student.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That feels very Enneagram 3 of me. Just kidding. But yeah, that's what I like. Because again, a lot of people are like, I don't want to be put in a box, right? Like before, I think before that, I took that class, I would be like to my husband, I'd be like, let's take this and see what you are. And he'd be like, I just don't want to be in a box. I'm like, I guess you're an Enneagram so-and-so. Anyway, so because then we're helping filter how our person is doing certain things as well. So I think, but as you get to know the Enneagram, I think that's what I love about it. And I love about your work specifically and the awareness and paradigm shifts that you bring is that, you're not just a number here. You are all of this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And what it really shows is just our starting line. It's just like, this is the picture of the journey as it is right now. And it also kind of shows me how I could maybe move towards my potential. And that to me is really rad. Like, oh, okay. I can be so much. I am so much. I just have to learn to access it.
Yeah. Okay. So we do a typing interview with you. We get kind of a starting line or a map. And then from there, tell me about your process from there. How do you move people to really own that transformation or step fully into themselves?
So I have a best practice that I like to move people through, but folks come in different places and with different needs. And sometimes my starting line or my best practice is actually a trigger point for them, or they don't have enough emotional or physical capacity to hold the work that we need to do in there. So I hold the whole process, but then we assess together where they're starting. And then I'll put together a recommendation. Here's the first 7 or 8 things that we could do. You pick where we start, because the goal of behavior change is to have wins, right? I'll give you an analogy and then I'll come back. If we say January 1st, I'm going to start working out, and I slam myself into my workout clothes and I drive to the gym and I do an hour like on the treadmill and I just absolutely overdo it, right? I flood my nervous system. Do you think I'm getting up in 2 days and doing the next thing? Absolutely not. But if on January 1st, my alarm goes off and I slide out of my bed and I do 10 minutes worth of stretching and breathing, do you think I'm going to get out of bed in 2 days and do that again? Absolutely. And then maybe by February, I'm doing a home workout, or I'm doing a 10-minute walk on my treadmill at home, or I'm walking around my neighborhood. Our work in behavior change should be that by the next December, I am doing a full-fledged workout at the gym. But we set ourselves up to think that I can jump into the results on day 1. And so that's ultimately what I want out of my clients too, is we're holding where you want, but we need to enter in at a really gentle place so we can build some of your internal capacity and your resilience to hold the hard things that are going to come. And so I will weave things together based on the person that's in front of me. But my perfect world, right? If I'm leaning into my Enneagram type 1 access point, I'm real rigid and I want to do it in this straight line. And so we do personal development work first. We get to know ourselves through the Enneagram, and we then get to know our nervous systems. So we start really early on with stress management, burnout, what burnout looks like for me as a person, because it's very different for different people, how I complete the stress response cycle, and how I build more somatic or nervous system capacity. And I'm using what I'm learning about the Enneagram, my personal development, as I manage stress. And then I have more capacity to then move into my motivators, who I am, what I want out of the world, what gets me up and out of bed. How do we put boundaries around that? Because boundaries aren't intellectual, they're somatic. I actually have to hold the boundary in my body in order for me to do it. And so we deconstruct and rebuild boundaries. We do all of this sort of self-management work in our professional development piece, where I can really start to build what it looks like for me. And then I move into the third phase, which is operations, and say, okay, how do we build systems that honor these boundaries, honor these values and motivators, and that give you enough room to manage stress, to manage the pinches and triggers, because our work as humans is to recover. That's the best we can do in life, is just constantly recover.
Is this frustrating for people? Because if you're saying, you're like, okay, working out January, but actually, Amy, let's goals at December. I think me now could take that and hold that. 3 years ago, me would be like, Erin, are you kidding me?
Right.
Give me 2 weeks and then I am going to be running a half marathon.
That's right. And that's why I start with the thing that is most interesting or exciting or helpful to you, because I need to keep you motivated to do the hard stuff, which in a typical Enneagram type 3, it's slowing down, right? Slowing down to then speed up. Yeah, it is a different kind of work. You have to be ready for it. And there's lots of people out there who aren't. And no shade, no shade.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked about like who's good, who this would be good for. And you said, year 1 to year 3. But actually, as I'm listening to, I'm like, that might be great for me at this point in my business because, I've gotten here through grit and hustle and a lot of personal development and practice. I really do believe, in the power of intention and commitment and those things that, working with those elements and laws. But I do think that the next step in scaling is really this practice, because as you're adding teammates and employees and other things, that's like it's a different load. It's heavier and it's filled with, at least for me, a lot more trigger points where I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's not just me like running crazy now. Like there's a lot more to think about and stress over if you let it be there.
Yeah. That transition from being an independent contributor to having people that you rely on, whether they're contractors or whether they are staff, doesn't really matter. It's the human connection that I'm now bringing in. And if I don't have a good handle on my stuff, it's going to make, work productivity feel really messy. And it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to show up for, and it's a lot more capacity draining.
I'm in a small, like, unofficial mastermind. And this is the conversation that comes to the table all the time is, as people have scaled their business past being a solopreneur and now they're holding, everyone else's salaries. I've heard this, I don't know, the last few weeks. Everyone's like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? And I have all the stress now and this is this, and I just don't know if it's worth it. And and I don't know if men are having the same conversation the way that women are. I don't know. I know you work primarily with women, and I'm really curious though if they're, if guys are just scaling and growing and doing the thing, but women are kind of like, I'm managing at home, I'm managing myself, I'm also like thinking about everything there is to think about for everyone in my life, and now I'm like taking care of these people in my business and my clients, and it just can feel like
a lot,
too much.
I'm going to say some stereotypical things. So for your listeners to know that, like, I know this doesn't apply to all people all the time, but these are some trends that we see, right? We know that historically, men are conditioned culturally to disassociate more than women, right? Like, I can, quote unquote, turn off my emotion, or I can compartmentalize it, or I can push it down, which creates a whole host of its own challenges. But it might mean that I don't have to hold this tolerance for discomfort or stress the same way that a woman who is not only conditioned to hold everyone else's experiences and feelings, but to make them better, right? And so as our responsibilities increase, now I'm feeding families, I'm paying people's bills, I'm taking care of my children and managing my business, I might be taking on too much of the emotional burden because that's how I am conditioned, right? So maybe not enough for men and too much for women, which essentially is just the definition of trauma. When something happens too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough, too slow, too late, right? And so our work is to find the middle, and often the middle is built on those things that I'm walking people through. Do I know myself and my triggers? Do I know how to recover from my triggers, right? Stress management. Do I know what my motivators are? Do I know why I get up and do this work every day? Do I have guardrails to this work? Is my lane clear? And then are my boundaries clear? And I'm talking energetic boundaries, time boundaries, money boundaries. Like we do boundary work, and there's like 9 or 10 areas where we are identifying and setting boundaries. And women are really leaky in our energetic boundaries because we are giving emotional capacity and emotional labor away so easily that we don't have enough left for the hard things. And then so what can happen is that we use a false fuel as a motivator. So I'm using scare tactics like fear or, sort of like disaster thinking of like, everyone's going to lose their jobs and I'm responsible for all these people, as a way to motivate my nervous system to keep working hard beyond its capacity, rather than having a clear understanding of the container that I sit in. And it's like, this is what I need to operate my business. And here are my, pivot plan 1, pivot plan 2, pivot plan 3 of what I need to do when that doesn't happen. What are my checks and balances? What does, financial security have to look like for my business, for my nervous system to rest? I mean, there's so many things in there and it's different for everybody. So yeah, it's a real thing.
Oof. Okay. That was beautiful. Thank you for pulling that out. I'm assuming that people listening are probably feeling that in their body at some place, right? Because it is a lot to hold. And some of my clients, we do a lot of business coaching, and one of my clients, they're women business owners, and they're amazing and they're so kind. And I keep coming back to this thing though of like, it's not personal. It is business, cash flow, getting paid on time. That's not a kindness, just sweet thing. Like you need to get paid, right? Here's some ways to like talk through it. But there's so many things that come with employees and asking for money and all of these things that are just their business skills, but their life skills. And it always comes back to this thing. And they always, are asking like, well, we need more confidence to do this. I'm like, how much more confidence do you need? Like, what does that actually mean to you to say that?
Yeah.
Like, how many more books do you need to read about this thing before you can start putting these things in place? Or how can we create safety there so you can actually go after what you need in your business? But that scarcity and that fear and driving from that, I see that all the time with people, not just women, a lot of
people, humans.
We coach too, people, but it is really a constant thing. And that can be really hard to make business successful and keep going.
Yeah. And in my humble opinion, it has nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with how comfortable are you at holding discomfort in your body, right? Like think about the last time someone hurt your feelings. Can you sit with it? Can you manage it? Can you move through it in a timely space, not disassociate it, not vent it out on somebody else, or, like have to, word vomit, which it's helpful to talk to somebody for sure. But there's a difference between like expressing and getting it out and moving through it and ruminating on it. Right. And so like I can tell you what happens in my body in those moments. And I can tell you from a sensation standpoint when I can feel it releasing. And that's when I go do the hard thing, right? But how many of us are in the middle of like solving the hard thing while we're still triggered?
Oh, yeah. Anytime something happens, I'm like, let's move. My husband's always like, I think that's probably a trauma response. Like, we don't have to sell our house. Erin, and I love that you're saying this because anytime I have these kind of conversations with coaches that are phenomenal like you, that are doing this work with people, it's obviously incredibly important for business. How important is this, though, for us as parents to be teaching our children how to do this? Like, I always think like the power in this for our upcoming generations and our marriages and the way that we just are in the world is this is the work that matters. I think business matters. I think making money matters a ton. And I think this work leads us often to healing those things in ourselves that maybe we would or would not have done without it. So I don't know if you can talk about ways that it's maybe changed how you parent or how your clients have approached their marriages or their friendships differently. I don't know. Can we go there for just a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a saying that personal development is professional development and professional development is personal development. Honestly, it's just human development. And I bring all of me in all of those places. I might have just learned to mask or harm reduce or make myself smaller in places to not let those things show, but it's still all of me. And so I love the moments I like sort of secretly giggle when someone brings a relationship thing into business coaching or a parenting thing and like, wow, this is so helpful. And it's like, yeah, because you're a whole damn human who has all these big needs and feelings. And yeah, what we talk about with your kids actually does help when I go to have that same conversation with the client and we're having a hard conversation about them paying their bill on time. I can use this same exact approach. It's like, you know. So yeah, I really think the more we sink into this work, the more we can realize that my personal development, my professional development, my operational development really helped me as a person who is leading and moving and guiding my own life. And these are just tools that help me do that regardless of the context or the environment I'm doing it in.
Yes, I think that's so important. And I think that's the key, right? That's what matters, is being your whole self in all of these situations. And I think that's one thing, when you worked in corporate for a long time, there's business us that shows up, and then there's like home us, and there's like, don't cross this line, right? And then we start our own businesses or we have kids, and all of a sudden it's like you're forced to say, I'm not just a woman here at work and then a mom at home. Like oh my gosh, there's all these things. And most corporate places are not set up to support women in those stages or seasons, from what I have experienced. I'm sure you have too. Yep. And so when we come home and we start our own businesses, I don't know if you found this, Erin, probably as you've done this work so much, maybe you're so evolved that maybe this didn't happen to you. But I found that like when I came home, I was still trying to be super professional in these places and then shift really quickly into these other places. And it was just causing a lot of tension in the way that I was approaching my life. And it didn't feel good. And I feel like now at this point in business, boundaries are so much easier to be like with my clients. Like, I'm picking up kids. I've got kids in the car, where it's not just like, shh, kids, be quiet. It's just like, hey, listen, like this is the life I've created and the business is created around it. And that's important for me to let you know that if you're going to work with me, right? Like these are the things that I value and I find important. So I want you to understand that. So if you don't value it, you're probably not my person. But I don't know if you found that, Erin, as you were transitioning, that holistic approach to really being your whole self, it is a transition when you're creating your own business if you've come from a corporate culture and have had to be one way for so long.
Yeah. And I will say that's actually the reason why I left my corporate job. If this didn't happen, maybe I'd still be there. I don't know. But it started with, me being pregnant, super sick, throwing up in the trash can in my office, having to hide it, and then like walking into a meeting and like pretending like I'm not pregnant, right? Because I was the youngest, director on staff and already getting like, these old men calling me kiddo and not taking me seriously and all the things. Mind you, I'm like 34, so I'm not an infant, but I sure was treated like one. And then when I had my second child, my daughter, who's 9 now, was really struggling. We know now it's autism and sensory difficulties, but back then it was just really hard. I had a newborn and I had a child who was, doing self-harm behaviors a good portion of the day. And I just literally couldn't hold the mask in my corporate world and hold all of the emotional and regulatory needs that I needed at home. And I had to pick. And thankfully I picked them, right? Like, I had enough wherewithal and I had enough therapy and support at that point that I was like, whatever I do will be fine. And I eventually left. And what I was doing was like fractionally supporting businesses, like fractional COO kind of work, helping other businesses. And so I basically just traded one set of rules for another, right? Instead of just having one organization's mission, vision, values, I was now operating under 5 or 6 as I was fractionally supporting. And I was like, oh, how did I get back in this same mess? And so I really struggled with that transition between expectation and what I was supposed to be and what my career should look like. I was on track for VP in a role and I was giving that up. And it was a lot of back and forth. And I don't think had I not had such high needs kids, I might have stayed in that pattern way longer than would be healthy for me. So I'm super grateful for them. Their neurodiversity and their high needs like forced me to break away from something that wasn't serving me. And then because of that, I bring everything I learn as a trauma-informed parent into coaching. I teach CFOs how to regulate in a trauma-informed way from information I've learned in occupational therapy. It's like, it's a big old melting pot. And so you're exactly right. Like if people weed themselves out pretty quickly from me now, of like, oh, you're not my person. Like this isn't the kind of work that I want to do. I'm like, great, that's fine with me. There is somebody who can help where you are. But right now I am a messy mom of 2 neurodiverse kids. I live in a disabled body. I deal with chronic pain every day. I'm messy and I'll welcome your mess, and I'm really good at what I do and you will see results, but it's not always linear.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Erin. And I encourage everyone to go follow you, find you, because I think you bring wisdom in just the most genuine, authentic way. And I've enjoyed you in so many, as a client, being your client, and then just being able to follow your journey. So thank you for all of this wisdom today. Wow.
For people to know that Amy was the catalyst for me figuring out my voice and my work and how I could name what I did with such clarity. So I don't think I would be where I am had I not had your support and your coaching and your guidance. So the feelings are very mutual.
Thank you. I received that. That is so kind. Messaging is transformational, and I think you have obviously done all the personal work to get there. And I think working through those things, because our words are powerful, the way we talk about what we do and who we are, is really, really powerful in the world. And so, but I love that people, if you're not feeling clarity in your life and in your business, what a beautiful place to start, even just starting down this path of doing this work before you come see someone like me. So thank you, Erin.
Well,
I received that.
Our work is like in parallel, because that's what the Enneagram does, is it gives clarity around messaging.
Yeah.
Right? The messaging of my patterns. So we're working on opposite sides of the same coin, and it's really rad.
Yeah, that is so cool. I love you. Tell everyone where they can find you. And then also, let's start with that. And then I have one more question for you.
Yeah. So I'd love if you hop on, if you're on Instagram, follow me on Living the Enneagram. I super, super love to put out great content, educational content. It's the place I really like to pour into folks. I have tons of free resources and tools, YouTube channel, digital downloads that are free. You can get so much from that access point. And then if you really want to take a deep dive into my coaching philosophy or how I like to work one-on-one with folks, you can check me out at livingtheenneagram.com.
Yeah. And that typing interview would be a really great place for people to start. Do you ever do couples?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I have a really fun approach to typing couples. And then we do like a 4-session where we sort of break apart your types as individuals, and we lay them over top of each other. We talk about how you communicate. Oh, it's so fun.
That is so fun. Well, I asked that because this is like what girlfriend, this is what I talk about with my girlfriends. They're like, oh, well, my husband's this. And so I think he's doing this. And I'm like, is he actually that? I don't know. Anyway, this is just, the girl talk conversation, the nerdy mid-30s girl talk conversation.
Yeah.
That type is our husband.
Yep.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. And Erin, as a last thing, is there one last beautiful piece of advice? You've given us so much in this interview, but is there one last piece of advice or a book or one of your specific resources that you, besides your typing, you've got a cool free typing resource in your interview, but is there one last thing you want to share with people that you want them to hold on to as they finish up this conversation with us?
I will say that our work as humans is to orient and go at the slowest part of ourselves, right? So the place that feels the stickiest or the hardest, that's where we start from, and that's where we build from. And change will stick if we start there, right? Pushing through is just pushing through. It's just flooding the nervous system. And so I don't subscribe to that. And then I have seen over and over and over again that we can slow down to speed up our version of success. And it's really cool.
That feels like it was very meant for me. So thank you. I was supposed to be in England last week for work with one of my favorite clients, and I got so sick.
Oh.
And I was just, and I'm not a sick person, but I was laid down and I had fever and chills, and I was like, I can do it. I'm going to go to the airport tomorrow. And one of my coaches, who's so kind, she sent me a sweet little message through Instagram, and she was like, who wins if you go?
Yeah.
And that question, I was like, I don't know. Nobody. They wouldn't get the best version of me. I would not be the best version. Nothing. No one would win. But it's that idea of like pushing through and just getting it done. And that's just, our culture is set up like that. And I'm probably more susceptible to that because of my personality type. But I think that is a beautiful, beautiful place to end, Erin, because I think most people who start businesses have that hustle approach because that's how we do things.
Yep.
So slow down to speed up.
Yep.
I love you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. You're a delight. It's so easy to talk to you.
Oh, this was so beautiful. Well, Erin, thank you so much. Go follow Living the Enneagram. And I can't wait to do a typing interview with you soon. All right. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.